Hi there honeybees, this is a Self-Love September resource and this one is all about bold self-expression, being authentic, being the true you, being confident to come out and dress how you want to dress, say what you want to say. There are so many people that deal with this particular kind of issue on their self-love journey, and actually it's funny because it's not something that I have really ever had a problem with, as I'm sure some of you can fucking imagine. I'm pretty confident and pretty bold in my delivery of my words and the way that I dress, etc., the way that I carry myself in the world. And as a result of that, I've actually been privy to a lot of people's issues with this kind of thing long before I got into counselling and slinging cards and trying to offer advice and getting to the end of my own healing journey and realising that I wanted to pay a lot of that stuff forward and help people on their own kind of mission to heal, if you want, and to be authentic and live in their power. Even when I was a teenager, I would get people saying to me, and some of the people that said this to me were much older than me actually, and they would say, I'm so jealous of you, I'm so envious of your ability to be bold and to be confident and to dress how you want and say what you want. And a lot of people would want to know my secret, or they would just say you don't know how lucky you are. So I've been aware for a really long time of how important it is for people, the idea of being more confident, being bolder. It's almost like this very important skill that people really want to be able to learn. People want to be able to adopt those traits of confidence and boldness that other people have. So I've definitely been aware that it is something a lot of people do struggle with, and that's helped me to think really clearly on my own journey about how much it's helped me and how awesome it's been for me to be outgoing, to be confident, to be bold in my delivery, in my dress sense, in my self-expression, in my artistic expression. It's not been lost on me that it is a gift. It hasn't been lost on me that it's probably made my life easier in a whole bunch of ways, although of course there are downsides, there are shadow sides as well to that equation. There are ways in which my life is made more difficult by my insistence upon being open, being honest, being bold, being confident, being authentic. But there are a lot of ways in which it's been amazing for me, and I know that a lot of other people are envious of those who seem to be more comfortable to just kind of step out and let it all hang out and let the freak flag fly, as I know people like to say. So my freak flag has been in the air for, you know, pretty much as soon as I rolled out of my mother in the hospital on that fateful day in 1984, and I'm still flying it now. And it's been nice to know that I have been able to inspire some people along the way, personally and professionally, to do the same, to actually kind of get their flag out and be a little bit more, you know, a little bit more carefree about flying it the fuck around. So that's been lovely. Hopefully I can impart some insights in this video that will help a few more people to be more confident and be bolder, because to me, when I think about how that's benefited me, I can get quite emotional about it sometimes, really thinking about it. It's been incredible for me on my life journey just to feel like I can wear what I want and say what I want and feel like I can be comfortable in my own skin. Obviously, I'm not saying I haven't had any insecurities. I'm not saying that I haven't had any shit to go through regarding my own identity, but the confidence that has been a part of my life for a really long time, and that so many other people feel that they lack, or they can't really harness, they can't really get in contact with that confidence within themselves. I know that it has nurtured me. I know that it's opened doors for me. I know that it has opened up conversations for me with people who then became trusted advisors, loving friends, you know, really important people in my life. I know that it has allowed me to go through this journey in the online sphere in a way that's been really lucrative for me financially, lucrative psycho-spiritually. So that's been really, really awesome. And I know that a part of what it's taken to get me to this point with building my platform online and exposing my creative endeavours online, etc., has been that confidence. It's been that boldness. That's been something that I've needed to get this to where it's come to the point where this is my full-time job now. So I definitely want to be able to talk in a useful way about the art of becoming more confident and the art of living in your boldness and being your true self, even if it's scary, even if there could be some fallout from that, even if there could be things you've got to deal with as a result of that might not be altogether pleasant. The payoff from doing that is incredible. And if you've been living months or even years, decades maybe even, of your life feeling like you're not being who you truly are, and you're not living in your authenticity, and there is this boldness and this confidence that you want to be able to exhibit that you can't quite harness right now, then I can imagine that you feel as though you've got quite a bit of untapped potential inside of you, quite a lot of stuff that needs to come out and that you would like to see rising to the surface, and you'd like to see maybe the tangible results of that daring and that boldness and that confidence that you really want to harness. So that's really what the video is about. That's why I've included it in the Self-Love September content. The people that I met along the way that told me that they were envious of my ability to be confident and to dress boldly and be kind of out there, those people had varying degrees of desire to do that on a daily basis. It's not like everybody who wants to be more confident and more authentic in themselves wants to actually do that to the extent that maybe I or maybe some other people do. But I think what all of those people shared, the common thread that was really evident in all of those people that I've met along the way, is that they've recognised that they sometimes need to have that boldness. They sometimes really need to be able to have the confidence to speak up, to have the confidence to fight for their rights, to have the confidence to show their authenticity even if they might be judged or ridiculed for it. So I think it takes a little bit of self-exploration. You have to think about the extent to which you want to be bold and confident and expressive. Not everybody wants to express what's in their head as much as I do, for example. Not everybody wants to dress flamboyantly the way that I do. Not everybody wants those things. You don't need to want to have those things. If you don't want those things, you're not weird, you're not unacceptable. There's nothing, you know, about you that is an anomaly. There's nothing about you that needs to change. If you don't want to be that peacock, if you don't want to be showy, if you don't want to be like at the front of the crowd, or, you know, you don't want to necessarily stand out when you are riding a train or in the middle of a party, that is not something that you need to fix, okay? Not everybody wants to be as out there. Not everybody wants to teach themselves how to be more extroverted or how to be a more confident speaker necessarily. Not everybody wants to be the person that has the megaphone. Not everybody wants to be the person that gets looked at in the street, and that's okay. You do not have to want that in order to find your way to living in your authenticity. It's not, those two things basically don't go hand in hand, is what I'm trying to say. It's not like you have to want to be this peacock and this kind of show off or this person that is at the front of the crowd in order to be on a quest for authenticity. Loads of people would not be authentic if they tried to be that person. Basically consider the extent to which you would like to be able to speak up more, to fight for your rights more, to be more yourself in situations where potentially normally you would be more reserved, or you might even pretend that you were a different kind of person than you really were. You might find that there are certain key situations or certain relationships in your life, certain scenarios where you would like to be able to be more authentic, you'd like to be more you, and you tend to find that you do put yourself in a box very much in those kinds of situations. It's like you are being very cautious around certain people or in certain scenarios, and you won't actually let yourself be who you authentically are, and you would like to be able to be more authentic in those situations. You might feel like you just want to be able to speak up more overall. You might feel like you get talked over quite a lot, or you're always wondering when it's your turn to speak and you're never quite getting there. You're never really feeling like it's your turn to take the mic and speak your piece, and you would like to feel as though you could have that opportunity. You might recognise that there's been a certain situation in your life where you really needed to speak up for yourself, to stand your ground, to say the truth, and you didn't do that. Something inside of you said, no, you can't do that. That's not something that you would do. And as a result, you were in danger, or you ended up being really miserable. You ended up being stuck in a situation for a long time that you didn't want to be in. And you might look back at that particular event in your life and think, you know what, that's never fucking happening again. From now on, I want to be able to say what's on my mind. I want to be able to speak my piece. I want to be able to fight for my rights. So there's a number of different reasons why somebody might come to this conclusion that they want to be bolder in their self-expression. And it's not always because they want to run a creative platform like the one that I run, or they want to stand out in a crowd, or they want to attract more eyeballs towards them, or whatever, or they want an audience around their work. It's not always for that kind of reason, although that kind of reason is also not wrong. But sometimes it's just because somebody recognises deep down inside themselves that they need that confidence when it is appropriate and when it is necessary to be able to say, hey, I'm here, I've got something to say, wait a minute, pass me the mic, I have something that I wish to express. So for some people it's this sense of just knowing that when they need to be bold in their self-expression, they can be, whether that's to get a job opportunity, whether that is to defend the rights of those who are less fortunate. There are a number of reasons why a boldness in self-expression might be something you want to cultivate more of. I would definitely recommend taking some time to think about how being more boldly expressive would help you personally. How would it aid you on your journey? Why would it be good for you? Take some time to creatively visualize different situations, creatively visualize the progress towards your future, envision different scenes and different relationships and stuff with yourself as a more boldly expressive, authentic person who isn't afraid to stand in their power and isn't afraid to own their truth, and really think about how that would positively affect you and also by extension the people around you. This kind of exploration will definitely help you to understand more about why you want to be more self-expressive, why you would like to be more bold in one way or another. And then the next part of the process, I think, that would really help more than anything is to consider what you learned about self-expression as you were growing up. I know that this is something that comes into my work a hell of a lot, guys, and it's not going anywhere, to be perfectly frank. Although I recognise that not all of the conditioning that we received in childhood is absolutely the culprit and the root cause when it comes to anything we're dealing with in adulthood, I think it's absolutely fair to say that when we're younger and we are a sponge and we're soaking up all of that societal crap, all of those family dynamics, all of those parental expectations, all of it, we're drinking it in without even meaning to. It's totally fair to say that that really has a big effect on the way that we view ourselves in adulthood, the way that we view our potential, the way that we make decisions, etc. So my advice to people to actually go back through the timeline of life is advice that I think is airtight, and I definitely will continue to give that advice just personally. It might not really work for everyone, for sure, but I think there are a lot of people who do convince themselves that they don't need to go back to the childhood situations because actually they're afraid of doing that. They're afraid of going there. So I would definitely recommend looking back over the timeline of your life, thinking about specifically what you learned about self-expression. Think about the adults around you who were self-expressive and how were they treated in your family? How did you see them being treated by society? Did you learn anything from them? Did you feel particularly inspired by them at any point? What was the general consensus around bold self-expression in your family? Was it encouraged? Was it strongly discouraged? Why or why not? Really think about that and think about where you were placed as an individual when it came to self-expression. Did you find, for example, that maybe one or more of your siblings was more naturally self-expressive and perhaps that was accepted, maybe even respected, but when you tried to be more self-expressive, it was almost like you didn't get that same acceptance and encouragement, potentially, or maybe vice versa. When we really take a serious look at what we learned about the nature of self-expression, the beauty and the art of self-expression, it is very revealing. That exploration is very revealing. And that's not to say that there haven't been significant things that you've picked up along the way in your adult life that have also led you to certain conclusions about your own freedom to be self-expressive, but a lot of that shit is going to come from upbringing. So take a look at the messages that you received, the different things that you witnessed that may have had an effect on your ability to express yourself boldly. Sometimes when we do this kind of work, we do have a few kind of bitch slap moments. We have a few moments where we get really slapped in the face by the reality of the kinds of things that we were discouraged from doing, the way that our passion might have been dampened by adults around us, the way that we might have been controlled or unfairly manipulated down a certain avenue in terms of our personality. We might find that we were censored when we were growing up. You know, these kinds of realizations, those bitch slap moments where you think, do you know what, that really hurts. I'm angry about that. I feel resentful about that. I feel that I could have had so much more or taken my life down a certain avenue if the adults around me had arranged themselves like this and done this kind of thing and taught me this kind of lesson. And you have to sit with those bitch slap moments for sure when you're going back over the timeline of life. I've definitely sat with those bitch slap moments, and it's pretty raw and it's pretty real, and it can definitely get heavy, it can definitely get emotional. I've definitely been teary looking back and thinking, damn, I really wish that they played that a different way. I really wish that I had been given these messages or this kind of encouragement. And it's really kind of looking back on myself at certain ages and thinking that's really sad, I wish I could hug myself at that age. And that's really the foundation, to be honest, for a lot of inner child work that I've done, and the inner child work that a lot of people have done. It is actually about going back to those former situations and giving yourself a hug at that age, and that is something that's legitimate. That is a legitimate use of time and energy on the self-development path that I think a lot of people have given themselves to with overwhelmingly positive results, you know. So sit with those bitch slap moments when you kind of recognize that maybe you were not encouraged to be self-expressive, or you were potentially guided in a direction that made you suppress certain things about yourself. You're gonna kind of have to go through that feeling of resentment, maybe bring those feelings of anger to the surface, sit with those emotions, don't try to suppress them, don't try and tell yourself that they're bad, recognize them as part of the process of eventually reaching this point where you say, okay, that was then, and I have processed those emotions, and I've sat with those things, and I've gone through the natural cycle of, you know, the resentment, the anger, the sadness, and all the rest of it. But from this point, I am accountable for what happens next. And that is where you want to get to in the process, you know. So whatever you recognize about the way that your childhood was set up and why you might be having problems with self-expression now, you've got to go through that process of feeling all kinds of feels about that, and then coming to this point where you're like, okay, but the narrative can change from here on in. I write the rest of the fucking story. It's my fucking story. Pass me a pen, damn it. And that's kind of the place that you want to get to in the process eventually. If you want to be more self-expressive, if you want to be more confident, if you want to be more authentic in your life, then you've got to think about what kinds of risks you're prepared to take to make that happen, because I think self-expression and confidence does feel risky in a lot of situations, particularly where we have really been afraid of doing it, and we haven't really been speaking up, or we haven't really been as authentic as we could have been and wanted to be. You have to make an agreement with yourself that it's going to feel risky, and not everybody is going to approve. Naturally, that's as it may be. You may experience some ridicule, you may experience some sense of rejection, or some sense that you have created this feeling of disappointment in people around you who really wanted you to kind of stick to the script and are upset that you have chosen to walk off in another direction. You've got to basically write a declaration of your intention to be with yourself and be who the fuck you are. And that is scary. There should be a feeling of vulnerability in that. You're not a fucking robot. You're not a fucking robot. You've got feelings. Everybody has feelings in certain areas of their life of wanting to please somebody, wanting to be a part of a group, wanting to feel like they've assimilated into some area of society or community or family or friendship. And we do wear personas, and we do make compromises, and we do give across a certain idea or a cluster of certain ideas of who we are. And if we come to a point on the life journey where we recognize, oh, hang on a minute, I'm really actually suppressing these other bits of me that I would like to be able to give some airtime to, yes, that does feel vulnerable. It's supposed to feel vulnerable. It's not supposed to be something that you just animatronically walk into, like, oh, I'm going to be more confident, I'm going to dress how I want to dress, I'm going to start saying these things that I'm always suppressing, I'm going to decide to let everyone know that, you know, I don't feel this way anymore, I actually feel very much this way, I'm going to come out of the closet, I'm going to walk out of the woo-woo wardrobe. There's supposed to be a sense of vulnerability in that. Don't worry about that sense of vulnerability. That is normal. You've basically got to recognise that you've got a pretty straightforward decision between continuing with the status quo and feeling like there's something missing and like you're really not being authentic as you could be, or taking that risk, taking a deep breath, taking that leap, and recognising that, yeah, there may be some feelings of disappointment, there may be some feelings of mistrust, there is going to be an adjustment period for a lot of people who will eventually come to terms with these new things about you. You might feel some kind of way in your ego self about being judged or feeling ridiculed, feeling like you are maybe living outside of the lines a little bit more in the aftermath of your decision than you were before, and maybe there are things about that that are tough, but ultimately that's the decision you've got to make. Do you remain in the box, which isn't really indicative of your character, which isn't really conducive to your happiness, or do you, you know, collapse the box with a X-Acto knife and move on and move up and move out and enjoy the new experiences despite the fear and the vulnerability that you're feeling? It really might actually help you to think about who you could be inspiring on your journey towards bolder self-expression and greater authenticity. authenticity. Think about who has inspired you, who has brought you to this point of wanting to be more confident and wanting to be more out there in one way or another. Who's brought you to this point where you've recognized this is something that you want to work on? And then think about how that person's inspired you, how they've been a positive influence. You could be that to someone else. You could be that to your partner, to a work colleague, to a creative collaborator, to a friend, to one of your kids. You know, you could be that to somebody in the street. And that's an amazing feeling. I can tell you that right now, that is a fucking amazing feeling, actually, to know that you being bold and really just owning it and flying that fucking flag, it's helping you to help someone else, and that feels good. That feels good. And it's not from a really egoic place where it's like, oh yes, follow my example, I'm fucking amazing. It's just knowing that your little bit of bravery and your willingness to shine your light in the world has helped somebody else to show up in the same way, or at least think about the idea of doing that. And that's just magic. That's just paying it forward in a really psycho-spiritually fulfilling way, I would say. With a lot of the video resources that I make, you know, I do like to encourage people to go on a little bit of a shadow work kind of journey, and this video is not going to be any different. I think that I really want to say it's easy to get bound up in this feeling that you can't be yourself because of other people. You can't be yourself because of society. Somebody is not letting you be authentic, and you've got to look at that, and you've got to examine the extent to which that is true on some level, and also the extent to which it could be an excuse that you're making for yourself in order to avoid leaving your comfort zone, your carefully constructed comfort zone. And it's easy, it is very easy a lot of the time when it comes to self-expression and authenticity to blame other people, to blame family, to blame the fucking tiny one-horse, narrow-minded town that we live in, you know, to blame these external circumstances for our inability to be more authentic, to speak up more, to be, you know, who we are, who we know that we are, and who we really want to be. Are you telling yourself that it is nigh on impossible for you to be authentic, when really that is just a way of not tackling the obstacles in your midst and not really challenging yourself and never really getting to find out just how much more authentic and how much more bold you could be in this lifetime? Are you telling yourself that somebody else is standing in your way when really you're actually standing in your own way a little bit, and you need to get the fuck out of your own way and get on with the business of letting that freak flag fly high into the sky, you know? So it's really about questioning that. And every situation is so different, but I think that when we shadow work this kind of thing, we do sometimes see that we're making excuses, and we do sometimes see that we're kind of sitting on our hands and being cautious and biting our lips and saying, well, you know, I would like to be able to do this or go on that path or speak up or have a YouTube channel or wear this thing, but I'm not allowed to because of other people. And after a while, you do have to sometimes call bullshit on that as an excuse for you to remain small. One thing that a lot of people deal with when they start to be more authentic and they start to just be more out there with their beliefs or their way of dressing or what they want to do with their lives or their sexuality or any of those things, is that it can come as a shock to the people around them, and it can definitely feel as though before this switch to apparently the more authentic self, there was deceit going on, there was lies, there was manipulation, and it can look like that from an outside perspective sometimes. When you really start to get very real and raw and honest about who you are, people in your life can kind of look at you and give you a bit of a squinty eye and kind of think, well, you lied to me before, you know, you were really deceitful. All that time you weren't being upfront about who you were. And that can be a painful thing, but again, you're just prolonging it. You're prolonging almost basically the inevitable, really, by not eating that shit sandwich and dealing with the aftermath. It is amazing how many people do adjust to the changes that you make in the extent to which you're willing to be authentic. It is amazing how many people do come round the bend and start to see you and love you for who you are. It's also amazing how many people were actually seemingly waiting for some kind of external permission slip to be authentic themselves. And actually, by you being bold and just jumping over that hurdle, you have actually signed the external permission slip for somebody else. They are inspired by what you felt capable of doing. So you can really be surprised by who else has been kind of sitting on their hands and swallowing their authenticity down. And when you actually come out and say, fuck it, world, here's me, you actually inspire you know, one of your kids or your siblings or somebody else in your life to do the same. You're also obviously going to get people in your life who are going to try and insist maybe that the old you was the real you, and that this new kind of essence of you, or this new layer of you that you've decided to come out and expose, is the lie or is the mistake. And you know, there's only so much that you can talk to those people, there's only so many conversations that you can have about your own authenticity and your truth. If somebody is not willing to actually listen to your truth and accept it as your truth, after a while you've got to decide how much more energy you want to funnel into having that conversation on a seemingly endless loop. Finally, I think that it can be important to explore any situations or any relationships in your life that you feel are specifically stopping you somewhat from being yourself, from speaking up more, from, you know, really standing in your self-expression. Sometimes we have to survey the kind of landscape of our life, and we have to look at all of the different things that are going on, the relationships, the ongoing situations, and we have to kind of identify whereabouts there might be these ongoing issues that are stopping us, or that we really feel are just holding us back. Maybe it's a relationship that we feel is really dictating the extent to which we can be honest, and eventually there has to come this crunch time, really, you know, this fork in the road, where you decide whether or not that relationship is really viable anymore. Is it really feasible anymore if you also have come to this decision that you do want to be yourself, and you want to be loved and celebrated for being yourself, rather than feeling like you have to railroad yourself down a specific pathway in order to appease someone in your life. Sometimes we have to come to this point where we say, this is me, and I'm no longer going to try and kowtow to what you want me to be, or what you, this group of people, want me to be, or what this society wants me to be. I'm going to be me, and whoever wants to walk away needs to just fucking walk away, because I'm not going back in the box. I'm not. The box no longer exists to me. I'm moving forward. And you can either congratulate me and come with me, or you have to remain here. This is the ending point for us. This is as far as we can go together. Blimey, that was a bit of a heavy point to leave things on, guys. I hope some of these insights have been helpful, though. This has been an interesting video for me to do, because like I said, I've definitely come into contact with a lot of people who have been envious of me, or wished on some level that they could be more expressive of themselves and their truths, and have looked to me for advice or inspiration, or just reminded me of how lucky I am that I feel like I can go out dressed how I want to dress, or say what I want to say, or, you know, ramble on for an hour on YouTube in front of fuck knows how many people or who they are. And I think that it's really helped me to be humble and think about how useful it is for me to have those kind of feelings that I can do that, and that it's okay to do that. So I guess I'm really speaking from a position of privilege, and I really hope some of these insights have been useful despite that, or maybe because of that. I don't know, that's kind of one that I'm going to have to think through. I'll get back to you on that, guys, but I hope you've enjoyed this Self-Love September resource. I've really enjoyed delivering it to you. So much love and self-love and self-expression, honeybees. Blessed be to all of you. Mwah. Oh, I found an altar space. Just set up here.